Back to the No Name podcast, Jesse. I'm gonna get you fucking fired up real quick, boy. I don't know if you remember the last podcast episode we talked about basically 0 to 3 months, and then we got into a bunch of deep stuff that I didn't even get to one of my notes, but it also led me to like exactly where we're at right now. So I told everybody, I promised them we would basically go into like months 3 through 6 because at month 3, that's when you had left your team. Um, And then we were also talking about buyer consults, seller consults, and how important that is, not only with the NAR settlement coming up, but I've been around the best agents in the world, and they're typically not these flashy marketing, whatever. It's people who are like hardcore, really, really good with buyers and sellers, and they set this like precedence that I just never seen. It like makes the hair on my arm stand up when I get around people like you and some of these other people. So we'll dive into that. But you were getting hot on the topic of like, okay, 3 months in, you left the team. If you're starting today, you're in like months 3 through 6, or you're just starting out, whatever. Are you going solo? You joining a team? Like, what does that look like? And what kind of team you building?
So you're saying if I'm brand new, what am I going to do?
Yeah, let's go back to that real quick, like brand new, and then you can kind of revisit the stories of that 3 months when you left the team, what you decided to do.
I think, I think since there's an 87% failure rate in the industry, I think whether you start on a team or you start out going solo, I think you're going to be successful no matter what. I think some people are just built to be in the real estate industry and some people are not.
Yeah,
Obviously, 9 out of 10 people are not. So like I was saying before, is I guarantee if you surveyed the 87% of people that fail, they never read the red book. So anyone asks me like, oh, what's the first thing I should do? I always say read the red book. That's just
yep.
like that's like the best $5 education you could ever get. And then I don't know. I still think being on a team it's like a fast track to learning some good habits, but I would be on a very rigid, structured team that has all the systems and processes so you can see what a good example is.
Yep.
Um, there's two different models of the team. Like if you read the red book, there's the revenue model, and then I can't remember the other model, but basically one's like, the turn and burn model, and the other one's just like the referral based small team operation.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think it's a good idea to understand like where do you want your business to come from and how you want to do it for the long term. And then you start finding like which teams you should want to join. I know a lot of people are like instantly are like drawn to, oh, if I join the number one team, I'm going to become the number one agent. And they think they're going to get all the best treatments in the world. Well, that's not typically the case.
Yep.
Um, so it just blows my mind. Like even a lot of these top agent team owners in the country, like you look into their back end systems and whatever, it's not that they're amazing or they have something figured out that no one else has figured out. They just do the same stuff over and over and over a million times. All the boring stuff that no one wants to do. Everyone wants to get flashy and tricky. And this is like even in the social media space, every agent's drawn to the next latest and greatest piece of technology that they think is going to change the world. And at the end of the day, 90% of the stuff that worked 5 years ago is still the same stuff that works today.
With that being said, I want to actually touch on that because my biggest issue starting out, and I think probably why 9 out of 10 people fail, is because one, it's really hard getting business, but two, when you get in front of somebody, like those early questions of how many deals have you done, um, just procuring that business. What was it like 3 months in? You're sitting across from a buyer or a seller that you don't know. How are you getting that deal? You said you never got asked like, oh, well, how long? You remember I got just berated with
I
how
think
long have you been doing this?
it's like a sheep and wolf's clothes. It's like when there's blood in the water, dude, the sharks smell it. And so
Yeah.
it's all about also controlling the conversation. Like I think if you're knowledgeable and you're practiced, and I wouldn't even say so much scripted, but scripted's I guess a good word for it. I don't think people are ever going to question you. It's like if you're using all these dumb scripts that they teach newbies, I think that's when they start to like sense that there's blood in the water because what I'm sure what these people have seen or they've heard is they've probably been approached by multiple different agents. So I literally was on a meeting this morning with Zoom and they kept telling me, not a Zoom meeting, but with Zoom, the corporation, and they kept telling me that they were better than Calendly because they had unlimited text messaging through their notifications. And I'm like, but Calendly has the same thing. So they're telling me something that isn't really true, but they've been sold this soundbite that's true to them. And I've been on Calendly for 7 years. So I'm like, I'm probably grandfathered into some program that they've had from 7 years ago,
Yeah.
and my cost is very low. So when these agents are going on appointments, they're saying the same thing that all newbies say, but I'm sure these persons probably talked to somebody with experience and they're probably just getting two different messages. So I think when you're new, you're also trying to prove your worth and like claim value. And I think people
Thousand
that are
percent.
seasoned just do what they do without like trying to say, hey, I add this value. It's like hiring a lawyer. Right out of the gate whether or not this lawyer knows what's up. They're going to tell you exactly how they're going to do it. They're going to tell you what you need to do. And they're going to ask you all the right questions. And I think that same thing happens in real estate is good agents tell you how it's going to happen. They want to know what your goals and objectives are, and then they're going to tell you how they're going to make that happen for you.
But okay,
For example, I'm
what
saving you
did,
one little
yeah, I
thing.
was gonna say, what did you say? I don't want to just like have a podcast where we talk about,
Remember I texted you a couple of weeks ago when I said, here's the problem with this specific person is they're trying to be like an investigator.
yep,
And I'm like, that's the problem. They're asking way too many questions without leading the horse to water. Like they're just in this whole gathering facts stage without then taking action, doing something with those facts.
yeah,
Like you don't need 100% of the information to make good decisions. uh, you know, it's like that analogy goes when they gave like it's when there's like that potting analogy where there was a teacher and they broke the class up into two different set groups, and they told one group, they said, hey, I'm going to give you 30 days to make the perfect pot. And then they told another group, we're going to give you 30 days to make as many pots, and here's the quantity that we want. Well, in 30 days, the one that did the quantity ended up winning because they had the perfect pot at the end, where the first group that was trying to build the perfect pot was so stuck by paralysis by analysis by building everything every single way the exact way that they got stuck. And so I think Steve Jobs, or no, it's Phil Knight says, no one needs to know what is the crappy process you took to get to where you need to go, but the deliverable needs to be perfect or
mhm.
close to perfect. So it's not all about like trying to bring people on this journey of discovery with you. It's about already doing it, having the practice, and then laying it out for them.
Yeah. I think we're gonna get into that. I know we are the buyer and seller consult, but
Mhm.
I want to remind you of something, and actually talk about an observation. So take it back, and I can still remember the video, dude, I made because I was documenting everything. And you were dressed up to the nines, and like we get out of your Jeep and we're videoing it. So two stories real quick, and then I want you to talk about this. One was I was talking about that husband and wife. It was a listing appointment. I had been working with that couple for like a month to get the listing. Thought I had it. They ended up giving it to somebody else. I
Mhm.
was working with the wife the whole time, and she was a mess. But I guess with my personality, I liked that because she like needed me, confided in me. So I thought I had it. And you told me right away, you're like, well, who makes the fucking decisions in the house? Sounds like the husband does. And I'm like, well, yeah, obviously. You're like, I wouldn't have even given her a second of my life. I would have gone directly. Was he there? And I'm like, well, yeah, but he looked mean. You're like, I don't care. I'm going straight to his face. Like, and then two, we went to that listing appointment, the one I'm talking about, the video. And I remember you like sitting at the table and those dogs were jumping all over us, and it was a fucking hairy mess. And you like you asked one of them like who makes the decision, and one of them said something, and you literally pulled your chair up and faced them, and you never looked at the other one. Is that like just talk about that
I
decision
just,
makers?
like there's a couple of tricks you can do. Like one is, they always say is like, if you're scared to ask the question, just ask for a glass of water. The person that asks you if you want a glass of water is like the decision maker. It's
Mm,
really weird to me, I guess, in certain situations. Maybe I'm traditional or old school, but I think it's kind of interesting. Like when the wife or the woman is the one with like making all the decisions. Like we
hmm.
all know the woman makes the decisions at the end of the day, but when I go on these appointments and like it's like a total power dynamic of
Right.
the wife having all the control to me. That's interesting. But it's the old thing is like you want to be talking to the person that makes the decisions, and also that comes into like controlling the messaging as well. And like to add to a layer of that, like I know you've talked about this before with the, selling your friend's house, and it's like, hey, like I need to make sure like for 30 minutes I'm going to put on my real estate agent's hat, um because we need like basically shit's going to hit the fan at some point during this transaction. And I need to make sure that I wasn't the one that I don't want it to be my fault of you saying that I didn't tell you or that I didn't cover this before we go on the market. So like with that crazy deal that just happened that we talked about on the last couple episodes, that was another prime example of that. And I still showed up to that appointment wearing my nice clothes, went through the full presentation, all the things, and look what it did is it paved us a smooth path forward.
Yeah.
But going back to what you're stating is like, yeah, you want to make sure you're communicating with the person that makes all the decisions. Otherwise, it's going to be secondhand information. And I also feel that power or the decision maker is going to discredit you as well because they feel that like they're going to use their spouse as the buffer between you and them,
Yeah.
uh, and use that as an excuse. And, like here's the reality right now. I've told the team and the agents that we work with, I just say, look, uh, we had one situation where a seller called it one of the agents. It's not on our team. They just work with us. And he's like, hey, I want to sell this house for $1 million. And it's a mixed use commercial residential house that's probably worth 400. And he said that he got an offer from the neighbor for 800 and he refused it. And I said, that's because the neighbor probably owned that corner lot and he could probably build something combined. So it was probably worth 800 to him. And so I go, what was his name? He goes, I don't know. So I go, I guarantee you this was the seller's name because I looked up the owner of that deed on the corner. And then so he called the seller back and lo and behold, it was. And I said, go back to that guy and tell him you'll sell him the house for 800. It's only worth 400. So he called the guy back. He's like, no, we don't want it now. They won't let us do what we want to do on that corner lot.
Damn.
And so now he's like wanting to sell it for 1 million. And I said, dude, it's not worth 400. He's like, well, I should still put it on the market and let him pay for all the marketing. I said, no, that's a waste of our time. I said, ask him if he gets an offer for 450 if he would sell it. And he said, no. He said his bottom line was 800. So the agent was still wanting to put it on the market. And I'm like, that's the stupidest thing in the world, especially in this market right now. Like you're going to be spending so much time on those bad deals. And I know that doesn't go into like the talking to the decision maker, but it's also like it kind of plays into the fact of like some people are just delusional
Yeah.
and they have their own ideas made up and they're gonna try to do whatever they need to do. And especially in this market, you're starting to see all this craziness rise to the top.
And that I can totally play into that because not only is that wishful thinking on the seller's part, it's wishful thinking on the agent's part, which is where I was a lot of times too, especially early on, that hey, maybe we will get an offer at that. Like you can almost get coerced
Oh,
into like aligning with the seller, and you've always been direct. It's always like price, and then price is really going to be everything to at the end of the day, and location.
I always laugh because I always correlate those examples to the $2 million Zillow lead whose aunt's gonna give him this money
Right.
as soon as like all these life events happen, right? So you're like, damn, maybe there is $2 million deal behind this Zillow lead. And then you're all excited. And I always tell everyone I get the most excited when I get the deal under contract. Like that's when I know it's like we're not home free, but I don't get excited at all until we get like either an offer on a listing or we make an offer on a buyer.
Right.
But once it's accepted and my excitement level like drops to the floor.
Yep. What now you're sitting across from let's start with like a buyer, and now we're thinking NAR settlement hasn't officially hit yet, but like what is it in that buyer consultation that you're trying to achieve, and what makes you these other top agents with hardcore buyer presentations so like what makes it work?
Yeah. So the first thing I always ask everyone right out of the gate, especially like with the buyer right now, is like, what do you think I do? And how do you think I get paid? Like, and what's your expectation of what you are looking for out of an agent? And a lot of people just come up with this idea that agents are people that just open doors and show them around in our tour guides.
Yeah.
You're like, and I've always wondered that because it's so funny to ask those people the question because in their mind, they all have a different idea, especially buyers that have never worked with an agent. And they're just, I don't know, they don't really know how agents get paid. So I think they almost feel like it's a government appointed position or someone's paying them somehow. No, 90% of buyers have no idea how the agent's getting paid.
Right.
And a lot of them have different theories, but with a buyer, and this is like with sellers too, is a lot of them think you are they are your only client. So they're like, a lot of them don't know that you might have 10 or 20 other clients you're working with or 10 or 20 deals under contract. So they're like, okay, you need to be available at all times. You need to answer every single week and question that I have, which is why the consultation is so important. So it's just very important to have a structured process, even if it's just on Zoom. I don't recommend doing it over a phone call, but there's got to be a path forward before you actually get in the game, because 90% of buyers agents that fire their buyers are because they feel that their agent does not listen to them. And the reality is I guarantee you the agent's listening to them. They're just not getting what they need or what they want, and the agent's probably setting them up for success, but they're not communicating that to them. So, for example, which I like, Will and Eli do in their prior presentation, which they talk about is, when they get work with buyers that fire their clients, 90% of them are because the buyer says that their buyer's agent didn't listen to them because they told them they're looking for 2 bedroom, 2 bath homes with lofts. And the next thing you know, they're getting all 2 bed, 2 bath homes without lofts. But because the agents don't put lofts in the checkbox in the listing load, they probably miss 50% of those loft homes. So it's like you have to tell your buyers that, hey, not all agents are created equally. I was literally just on the MLS looking for horse properties, and I checked the box that said horses and barns, and only 2 houses were showing up. I removed it, manually went through all of them, and I found 7 more.
Damn.
So it's like that's the exact same scenario, dude. Agents are lazy. They have assistants maybe that are lazy, that don't put all the information in. I was just going through one of our listings that didn't have any of the measurements in the rooms. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. I think you need to look, write out all the listing load information, make it look the best that you can. I'm so fanatical that even in the descriptions, like for each room, if it's wall to wall carpet in every room, it better be wall to wall carpet on every single one. So that way it lines up perfectly.
Yeah.
Because when you're looking across those sheets, I want it to be an easy read. So asking the buyers from the beginning, what's your expectation of me? Do you know how I get paid? And then just going through the communication, like, how do you want your listings? Do you want them instantly? Do you want them daily? Do you want them weekly? Or are you going to use a third party app such as Redfin or Zillow? Or is there an app that you love? Here's the thing. Everyone gets bent out of shape over, you need to use my app. You need to be on my drip, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. Dude, I don't give a shit where the buyer's looking. I don't care. I actually prefer to use other apps as well for specific reasons. I like the Redfin app because it has the
Yep.
freaking HOA listed right at the top. And I know what HOAs I like, and I know what HOAs my clients like. So if you live in an HOA heavy market, that's going to be important. If you're in a non-HOA market, it might not matter.
Yep.
Zillow has better things for certain things. Homes.com has better things for certain things. It just doesn't really matter to me. At the end of the day, my job is to get the client the house they want for the price they want to pay and the timeline they want to do it in.
Oh man, that opened it up. I wrote down a few different questions, but you just said I want to get my client the house that they want.
Yep.
Will you ever comment on things that in a house that you like or don't like?
Personally, no. If they tell me, like, if they say from the beginning, hey, if you see a big red flag, let me know.
Right.
Or if they start asking me about the AC and the water heater and all that crap, dude, I'm like, look, I am not a technician. I have no idea. It might be brand new. My compressor, my AC just went out, dude, 2 years old.
Yeah.
If I came to this house and I saw that, I'd say, oh, it's great. It's brand new. I have no idea, dude, what I'm looking at. I can assume. And at the end of the day, no client in the world is going to walk into the house of their dreams and care about any of that stuff.
Right.
It's all smoke screens.
That's I think the point that I want to get across is that as a real estate agent, sometimes I think, and I did this too, I was like a chameleon, I could kind of flow with them of the way they were feeling. But sometimes people will be a little bit too direct. They'll walk into a house and be like, this fucking house sucks. But the client loves it. And you can completely botch that. And that I think is what disrupts the buying pattern. Doesn't help for future, uh, referrals and stuff. Will and Eli talked about this one time too, about that, like about just letting the clients go through this property. I don't care about the AC unit not work. I don't care about anything. It's the house. And that, again, these are all things that you hear from people doing hundreds of deals a year and getting so many referrals. Do you have to kind of step out? You're there to get them the house of their dreams.
Agents and inspectors will blow deals up, dude. And I've seen so many agents talk buyers out of deals, and then the buyers never buy a house from them. And
Yeah.
then they're like, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to oversell their value because everyone's like, add value, add value. So it's like, have I talked a buyer out of buying a house before? Yes. The reason why was because it was a very litigated HOA where I'd seen hundreds of houses go into foreclosure and the HOAs were like $1,000 a month. That's a whole different situation. That's like a
Hmm.
watch out situation. If the
Right.
buyer's like, I don't care, I'm rich, I'm gonna pay cash and I don't care about that, whatever. But if it's a first time home buyer, it's like there's gonna be some problems in the future. I can already tell you.
Yeah.
So um I just think like what you just said, if it's a say it's even a $30,000 repair, but it's the house of their dreams, you're not going to create more of that location. Like
Right.
a location is typically the most important thing to most people. You know, you can't replace views, you can't replace locations. The house and all the systems are all replaceable. Those are all money can fix a lot of those things.
Yeah.
So I hate it. It drives me nuts, dude. Especially selling Mason Hill. Like right now, it's got some weird stuff to it, weird elements, and I've had a couple agents like completely botch the whole thing.
Yep. Instead of the client falling in love with having an acreage estate.
And they're not going to listen to me because I'm working for the seller, so
Right.
I'm the enemy.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a whole different situation. So
Well, yeah, and a lot of, and again, that goes into agents, I think, doing onesie twosie deals, not thinking about the future and making this a positive experience.
and it goes into like in that consult too. It's like when we fight, like when we're going to see the house, let's not the houses could have listing devices, so let's have these conversations outside, not on site. When you find the house that you love, you're not even going to care about anything. You're just going to want to know how you can get the house. So let's not talk about, tactics on how to drop a lowball offer and get it accepted. Because when you find the house that you want, you're not going to care about the dollar figure. If you're an investor, it's a different conversation once again. And so then it goes into, hey, once we decide you find the house of your dreams, how are we going to write up an offer? A lot of buyers in this market feel that they can write an offer for 50, $100,000 off list. And so they'll ask like, hey, I want to get a deal. Well, my favorite phrase is, what is a deal to you? Is it getting the house $100,000 below list price? If that's the case, let's go look for overpriced homes. If your goal is to get a house of your dreams, then you might have to pay a little bit more than list price, especially if it's priced very aggressively
Hmm.
and everybody wants that house. That's why I always say price doesn't matter to people when they see the house they want, because their emotions are involved and they typically are willing to spend 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200,000 over list when the market was crazy and rates were low. But in this market, maybe it's five, $10,000 over list price. So, and once people start dropping a couple lowball offers and they keep getting rejected, they start to come around. But a lot of agents just don't know how to have that conversation. That crazy story with that Braveheart house that I've had the issues with over the weekend, I got a $950,000 offer on a $1.2 million house that's already priced low.
Yeah.
And then the agent came back at 1.1. So I'm like, this is what I'm saying. Like, these are just stupid offers.
925 to 1.1.
950 to 1.1, yes.
Good night. That's
Yes.
insanity. That's what you're dealing with and battling with. What about sitting in a seller consult now? Two-part question, or the buyer consultation. Are you showing up with that contract in hand? Your goal is getting it signed right there. You're not going to leave, or do you leave and give them an option?
For the listing agreement or buyer?
Yeah, on both. I think let's start with the buyers first,
So yeah.
because now we're progressing into where we need to get stuff signed and get the commission, which I think is the toughest conversation to have. That is brutal for me, but that's now the first conversation.
So right now, like that's why the asking them, do you know how I get paid works, is because then you can lead into that conversation. So I just say, look, before this call, you're a customer of mine. You're a customer. Like I have no fiduciary to you. For you to become a client and for me to represent you, call agents on your behalf, make offers on your behalf, for us to like lock arms and go side by side, you need to become a client. The only way that's going to is going to happen is if we enter into an agent client relationship. The only way we can do that is by signing a buyer broker agreement.
Yep.
Here's what that looks like. Here's what this means. This is what, here's the details. Typically buyers, 90% of them are cool. Let's get it rolling. Few of them have questions. A few of them are like, I'm not signing anything. Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you for saving my time. I'm not going to force anyone to work with me. I'm not going to force all these things. I've learned a lot of things over doing contracts different ways. And even in the crazier times now, uh, let's just say you get a listing and 15 of those offers terminate. Say you go under contract 15 times. Well, the TC is not getting paid on those. So like now, if it's a terminated deal, I wouldn't mind writing in there something like, in the event of a terminated contract, the seller needs to pay or the seller needs to pay the listing coordinator $100 per failed transaction. Like those are things that could be negotiated in.
Yeah.
Um, if buyers are wasting your time and writing out crazy contracts, there could be something in that as well.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many different variables.
And
But
then on
yeah,
this,
and if a buyer's like, I need to think about it, here's the thing. If they're like, I'm gonna go interview a couple other agents, whatever, dude. I've never been a hardcore closer in that regards of saying you need to sign right now or I'm walking away. Like I just feel like my skills are so good that they can go and interview someone else and they're still going to sign with me. And
yeah,
if they sign with someone else, it's because they offered him something that I'm not going to offer him anyway, such as like massively reduced commissions, free stuff, whatever, break the law, whatever it is.
gotcha. And that was what I wrote down. Now on the seller side, commissions. Well, the guy before you, Jackson, he came in and said he'd do it for 4%.
Yep.
What do you say to that?
I just say, awesome. What is Jackson like promising you?
Right.
And then they're going to be like, they're going to tell me this, that, and the other. And I just say, I'd say I would feel the same way if I'd feel the same way to you, or the same way if I was in your position too, because Jackson probably promised you four, and the guy before him probably told you six, and they're probably giving you the exact same thing.
Hmm.
However, I just went through X, Y, and Z of the things that they probably didn't talk about. Is that true or untrue? Like, what have they discussed? So the thing I do in my listing presentation is I just basically say, every agent that you interview is going to tell you you're going to do these things. And if they've already heard it, they're like, man, this guy's good. He knows exactly what he's talking about. So I've already lowered their barrier
Yeah.
of resistance by saying that. It's kind of like Eminem and 8 Mile when he basically takes all their ammo out of their pocket and says everything that they already know. So that's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like I say all the time, you're really hiring me for my negotiation skills, my communication skills, my expertise in the market, prepping your house, getting everything dialed in, knowing how to handle certain situations that are going to come our way in experience. If if you don't think that's of value, then yeah, you can go with Jackson. And if it's like if you're in the trenches of like calling FISBOs and expireds and you're really battling it out, and people are like, what's your rate? What's your rate? What's your rate? Or if they're like, Jackson said he would do it, if they're really rate sensitive and they're just like, Jackson said he would do it for 4. Okay, cool. So you're saying if I do it for 3.99, you're going to sign my listing agreement right now? Yeah. Okay, cool. It
Hear
just
you.
depends. I mean, you could do that, and that's another way you could handle it. Some money's better than no money, but I would just say, agent beware, is that if somebody's really grinding you over that right now, here's the thing that I love about clients like that is they're so easy to grind an agent on their commissions, but they're so easy to give up everything else in the negotiations on the price of their house. So they think in their minds, and this is what I want to tell every agent listening, they think everything's a negotiation. So they're not expecting to sell their house for what they're putting it on the market at either. So if they're listing at like 1.1 or say 800, they're going to sell that house for 7. They're expecting to get an offer for 700 and work with that. So they
Hmm.
typically want to overprice their houses too.
That's
So
crazy.
we have a pre-listing form that we send out in advance, and it has like all of these things in it, like your address, your favorite features, do you have any pictures of the house, condition, updates, all these things. And it says in there like, here's 10 things that most sellers care about, please put them in ascending order from most important to least important. And there's pricing, marketing, list price, sales price, repairs, like all of these things, so basically going in there what they're looking for.
Is there ever anything that comes up? Is there a pattern to that? Like if
Uh,
they think,
I am always surprised by what people are most um finding most important to them.
yeah,
But I don't really see a pattern. Most sellers are just like sales price.
right.
No, and that's the other thing too, is commission really, in my opinion too, agents do really a bad job of like explaining commission and like dollar figures. So like if someone's like, Jackson said he would do it for 4. Well, I'm saying I'm going to do it for 5. So the difference between 4 and 5 is $4,000. Like if I take off a percent, I'm cutting 50% of my commissions or 30% of my commissions. Like I still have all these other people to pay. Like I know that doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me. So at the end of the day, I'm going to be left with $500 in my pocket, and I'm going to put 40 hours worth of hours into this transaction. Like that's crazy.
Yep.
Or you could even ask them, hey, do you want to pay me an hourly rate? I'd be fine with that as well.
Right. Yeah. Go lawyer-esque on their ass. Do you
Sell,
remember? Oh, go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say sellers just don't ever really know that they don't know what they're talking about. Like usually they just like when commissions come up, they just know 1%, 2%, 3%, and they just think it's these small numbers.
Do you have a listing presentation in mind, or like an actual one that you went to where you feel like you probably got some of the tougher questions, um, and then you came out of it, and
I mean,
then
I've gone into listing presentations where I didn't know if I was gonna get the listing at the end.
yeah,
Um,
and then what they would call you, or they would literally sign right there, or what?
it's very rare that, I've had them like I always had a contract in my bag. So like if I saw that they were like giving me signals of like, hey, like I'm ready to sign this, I would just get them to sign in a document there. Or I just say, if they're like, hey, all right, let's get this thing listed, I'd be like, cool, my assistant's gonna send over the listing contract. And I would just text them and say, hey, send over the contract. Sometimes they'd just be like, hey, we're gonna have a conversation later tonight and get back to you.
Yeah,
And I just say, great, thank you. I appreciate it. If there's anything I can do in the meantime, let me know. And I'd
right.
always try to like find a value add to like send them after I left to just remind them, hey, here I am. You know, I'd say 9 out of 10 of them, 9.9 out of 10 of them ended up hiring me.
What about what was that massive house up on the hill? Was it Parrot Hill or Parrot?
Paragon, yeah.
Those were like crazy, crazy, crazy luxury houses. How did that listing, like, how did you get that one?
Well, that was like actually probably I remember I took that guy two hardbound books.
Two hardbound
Yeah,
like
because it was so
listing.
big. Yeah, I made two hardbound books, one with the marketing presentation and one with the CMA in it. And he actually interviewed someone else that we know. And he said that the reason that he ended up hiring me because he said one, it was the books. Two, it was like basically he's like, so much about social media. Three is like it was the way you dressed and you communicated with me and like the way you laid out the presentation. And he's like, and you never took your eye off the ball of like what we were doing.
In what was the ball, or what was it?
Just like getting his house sold and giving him ideas on like what he needed to do. Cause it was like really, it was a 10,000 square foot house. It was super empty.
And
They tried
you were
selling.
newer to the game. That's why I wanted to bring this up too. This wasn't like your
That
50th
was my
house.
that was my first ever expired listing and like basically my first ever like listing. Uh
Yeah.
and, and then
So that is where you could not only like, that's a tough sell, and you're going into that like, man, I want this. You're already thinking commission, but now it's like a totally different clientele and you're newer at it. So like, what was your mindset driving up that hill?
I remember just like thinking in my head, I'm like, dude, this is how I'm gonna break into the market. Like I've got to get this. And I was like in my own mind, I'm like, oh, this is how would $1 million listing do this? And so like
So it's
I
mindset, because I'd have probably been like, don't fuck this up. Don't fuck it up.
in the brokerage that we're at had just bought that land in Sherwood
Yeah.
and they were building all those custom luxury homes. And so the builder that we represented, one of the agents in the office, was working with that developer. And so I used that to my advantage. And I'd said, because they had that Lake Oswego development going.
Yeah.
So when I went on that appointment, I just said, hey, like, because he's like, well, how many houses have you sold in this area? And I was like, I just said, just to be truthful, I said, I haven't sold any. I said, however, I go, because I was a co-agent on all the listings for the developer. I said, I have all of these listings in Lake Oswego that I'm working on right now. And I said, and we just bought 20 acres. The builder we work for bought 20 acres over here. They're going to build all these custom built homes and we're going to have all of those as well. So I said, we're going to have all this traffic coming out here.
Yeah.
Like we're going to have all the buyers coming out here, and he really liked that.
So,
And I knew that the marketing sucked so bad because it was on the market for 2 years that I knew with the right marketing that house would sell quickly.
right.
And so like I just kept telling him that over and over and over. I just kept saying, man, the marketing is so bad. You're being underrepresented.
Yep. And then that turned into another one up there. Like,
Multiple,
you kind
yeah.
of became the Parrot Mountain dude, and that's right when I was meeting with you. So I'm up there all the time shooting videos and whatever. And like, I guess, how are you turning a listing into multiple?
So on that house specifically, well, okay, so I got the listing. I remember it was a really weird situation. It was a divorce situation.
Yeah,
There was two attorneys involved. They ended up asking for a pricing schedule of how to get the house sold within like 4 months, which we ended up selling that house within 2 months. It was a 4 transaction process. It was a tough deal, but so when I get any listing, I would just blanket the market of the neighborhood with tons of mailers, door knocking, all the things. Knock on the doors, say, hey, come to my open house, all the things. And so I basically would try to let them know, like, I'm the neighborhood specialist. And so even during the listing, I would consistently send mailers. And that's like everyone does, like just listed, just sold, all that stuff. But not me, dude. I'm just like sitting there sending the neighborhood, sending the neighborhood, sending the neighborhood. And I decided I was gonna make that one of my farms because the houses were so juicy.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we got the house under contract, and then some random number called my phone, and they're like, "Hey, we saw that you had this listing. We actually moved in the neighborhood last year. We want to buy that house that you have listed." I said, "Well, it's under contract, pending." I said, "But if you guys want to come take a look at it in case something falls out, because I'm like, maybe I'll get them as clients." And so they came over, and they said, we did the thing, and I said, hey, if I find a house, they said that we really want a house with views. We're on the other side of the road with no views. We really want views. I said, if I find a house with views, you guys will buy it. Let me list your house. Absolutely. So I go up and knock on the neighbor's door. Ding, 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 ding. Hey, I have some buyers that would love to buy your house. Like, are you thinking
No,
about selling? And he's like, as a matter of fact, I am.
no
Yeah,
way.
actually, I'm building a house in Beaverton, and I'm like, sweet. And we ended up getting that. He said he wanted 1.5. My seller said they were willing to, the people said they were willing to pay 1.35. So I started it off at like 1.2, and I got it for 1.25. And we wrapped that up. Then I sold their house, got that wrapped up. Then I sold a couple other houses
Yeah.
in that neighborhood, and it just spiraled.
Was I remember the area, but for the viewers, I mean, we talk on like YouTube. I try and coach up like, that niche, that's something that you love. Do you think that helped? Like you loved those style of houses, the bit,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think in that client, I think more the client than the house. Is there something that helps you? Like,
A
I
lot of
guess
those
when you're,
clients have like one is I love view houses.
yeah,
So like views alone, I'm like, dude, I freaking love this house. Like I'll love any house with a view. It doesn't matter what kind of view it is, some sort of view, except for like the concrete jungle.
right,
But so like in my mind, I'm excited to be there. I think a lot of these houses have like a lot of cool features. I'm not like a huge fan of like the old woods and things like that, but I do appreciate the craftsmanship of those houses. A lot of those people have a lot of money too. So they're just like, let's hurry up and get this thing sold,
yeah,
and their businesses are typically like so powerful or so successful that they're just not even caring that much about their house. They're just like, I want to be in the next one, so let's just get this thing priced and sold. They're very easy to deal with, most of them. I mean, I've had my fair share of like difficult clients
yep.
too. uh but yeah, for the most part, they're pretty simple.
I just wonder if it's like the mindset of going into some of the listing appointments when it's something that you really like, because you did a lot of high price stuff when it was coming to listings. When we flop to buyers, it's just kind of
Yeah.
what it is, who it is, but maybe that helps people when they're looking to break into a market is like really focus on what they enjoy. It gets their energy up.
The thing I never thought like would be a thing is actually moving from the office, from that Bridgeport Keller Williams office to the Next Home office in Southwest Portland, or no, that was Northwest Portland,
North,
was
yeah.
probably the biggest shift in my real estate business. For some reason, I just always knew I needed to be on that sunset corridor of
Yeah.
the 217 and 26 interchange. And once we made the move up there, my price point like tripled.
And you finished last episode, we got like 15 minutes. And you basically said like, all right, now you just went from a local ish brokerage, not even super local because Keller's it's national, but like everybody knows it. And I got when I was getting into real estate, because I came from title, everybody's like, the only way you're ever going to sell is going here. But you went to another one that was a lot smaller. That's when I got into real estate. I joined you there. But you also called that local model more of a trap model and
Yeah.
focused on transactions. What we didn't get to finish that. So like let's embellish is if people are really wanting to grow not only a real estate business, because that's the transactional side of it, but like really build something. Why is it a trap model?
The team models are lost leaders for brokerages. They all have reduced caps. When they hit a certain dollar figure, they're out. They use them as like they I mean, you know how it is, like when you were
Yeah,
like interviewing or in the title game, they all use the top producer as their like shining star, right? Like, you know, we have this agent at this office, and then they use them to recruit agents, and then you'll never talk to that agent ever again.
yeah,
So I always tell agents, and what I think to myself too is like, if I am doing 10 times the amount of business, would I be at this brokerage? If the answer is no, then I think to myself, well, then what incentive do they have to get me to that level? There is no incentive. It's zero incentive. So when you took a look at companies, say like Realty One, where their model is basically built for 12 to 20 unit producers, they have zero incentive to get you above that threshold. Because once they do, it's a diminished return on value. And they know every agent that goes above that number is now like making less money every transaction. It's like flat fee brokerages or 100% brokerages. If you're a high volume agent, you're spending crazy amounts of money, dude. I've had so many flat fee agents that are like doing, 100, 200, 300 deals. And they're like, oh, I pay 750 a deal. And I'm like, times that by 100, you're paying crazy amounts of money, dude. I'm like, you don't think you're paying any money? You're paying crazy amounts of money. I mean, I've seen some of these guys that are, I met with one gal last year that was spent over 170 grand to her brokerage, and she thought she was on the best split in the world
Why?
because it's all perception, like you're like, oh, I'm on a 90-10, or you don't know any better, when I said, when I was talking about a couple episodes ago, when I was talking about uh, people that go to work for one company straight out of college and say they were recruited by 15 companies. In their mind, they're like, I'm with the best company. It might be the worst company, but in their mind, it's the best because that's what they chose. So for them to admit that there's something better out there is them admitting that they a made a not as good of a decision as which they could have.
Right.
It's very hard to like take a blow to your ego like that because you always want to keep proving to yourself that you are that you made the best decision. I see agents do this all the time where I'm like, that agent would blow it up in this model that we're in. Like it would be the best thing for their business. And I see them bounce around from like Keller to Remax, the Century 21. They're in the old guard models. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. Or like you see these agents that go from like one brokerage to the next, and then they keep getting the same results, but they keep showing on social media, and everyone thinks they got a promotion or they moved to a new company because they're equating it to a W-2 job. It's all ego play, and it's just the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Well, you mentioned that the Red Book, obviously written by what Gary Keller. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
Keller Williams model. So like it has two avenues, you said, like a heavy referral business. So that's kind of like what we're in. And then there's the other one, kind of like the mega team. So they've kind of, it seems like pioneered the mega team. Is it better for mega teams to go that route, like a Keller Williams, a brokerage? And then the reverse side of that for people who are thinking about deriving the business, getting the business, but referring it, like what makes most sense? And especially going forward.
Everyone thinks that the path agents think when they're new, they think that the model is agent, team, brokerage owner. They think that's the way you're going to get rich.
Right.
The real estate has been revolutionized by the cloud models and revenue share models where agents can now not take on all the liability and actually help build the business and be a true partner and make more money than they've ever thought they could make in their lives. Very like not fast, but way quicker without any restraints of any boundaries of city geographics. So it really depends what you want to do. And I think you never, dude, when do you ever hear agents anymore saying they want to own a brokerage? It doesn't exist anymore because it's not needed. You're
You
literally
know,
leveraging cloud platforms to
yeah.
build basically your in I don't even know what you want to call it, an inside brokerage or something like that.
It almost seems like it's not like own the brokerage anymore. And you think if you do hear anything, it's usually like people killing it and they want to build their own. Like, I want to build my own brokerage. That's what I hear a lot.
Yeah, they're uneducated. I mean, if you're listening to this and that's your mindset, I'm just going to say you're uneducated and your ego's in your way.
And and why? It's fascinating, you know, and
87% of agents fail. And so like that, it tells you alone that 9 out of 10 people you work with are going to fail. You're literally, I talk to the most successful brokerage owners in the country. And you know what they all say? They all say like, you're dealing with the same problem over and over and over a million times over, and it never ends. It's like digging a hole in the sand. I remember when I worked when I first got my first job in the beer distributor, That's not the brewing. That's a different world. There's just distribution and then brewing. And I
Right.
remember like every day I'd go in and stock the shelves, and I'd be like, tomorrow I'm going to come back and stock the shelves, and the same spot's going to be empty, and it's never going to end.
Yeah.
The same thing with owning a brokerage. The same problem is going to always exist. The same agent problems are always going to exist. You're always having agents come in, agents go out. There's a ceiling. And I remember talking to one of the most successful single office owners in the country. And he's like, the most money I ever made in a year was I barely netted $1 million. He goes, I had 900 agents, I had 900 headaches. I was living in misery and it never ended. And he's like, the only thing that was standing in front of me in success was my ego. And he's like, now in the model of what EXP is built, I have over 10,000 agents and I don't have to answer those calls anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I would just say if you're going to go in and build a model somewhere, why wouldn't you build a brokerage on the EXP platform and then see where, and then that can spread out through the country and just let it go. So like literally you could just be building your brokerages like a temporary play. Why do you think all these brokerages bring their brokerages into this model? It's
Yeah.
because it's the only way you can really get exponential growth. I mean, going out and opening a brokerage and then like, why is it called independently owned and operated franchises in the Keller models or Remax models? You're in city to city. Like it's very restrained. There's a lot of handcuffs on that model.
And lawsuits.
Oh, dude, it's liability galore. Well, you're one lawsuit. This is what every single one of those brokerage owners says. You're one lawsuit away from losing your brokerage. You're just hoping that you have one agent that doesn't do something stupid. And it happens, dude. The bigger you get, the more liability you have. I mean, it's inevitable that something crazy is going to happen.
Yeah, dude. And even off that subject, it's like no matter what industry where you're at, even like the stuff we do with marketing, like if you're at the top or you're doing something, everybody's trying to cut your legs out. Remember, we were shooting videos early on, and some chick turned me in just because our kids went to the same school, and she started seeing me more than around the school that she owned type stuff.
Oh, yeah. If there's any threat whatsoever, man, people try to take you down left and right.
Yeah. Um. No, I know we really touched on 0 to 6 months solo and team. Um. And then where the best fit is. So we got a few more minutes here. Um, I did want to talk about too any tough objections or like what going forward now, buyer presentations, seller presentations, um, with NAR settlement up front. We got to have that conversation right away. Now, if seller does not pay, you owe me this commission. How do you feel like that's going to go with clients right out of the gate?
I mean, if I was a buyer, I'd say, well, what percentage of sellers aren't going to pay your commission?
Right.
I always put myself in the position of the other person. So I guess if I'm a buyer, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, why? I'm not going to pay this fee. So why would, and I know 9 out of 10 sellers are going to pay the fee. Why not? I want to go see the houses where the sellers are going to pay that fee. People aren't stupid.
Right.
You know, I guess if I, man,
It, it I
I just think the top agents aren't going to do it for nothing.
Yep.
So I think if you want a really good agent, you're going to pay no matter what. And it's in a situation that the seller isn't paying. You're not going to be able to find good agents not paying the fees. So can you go out and find a crappy agent and get full service for next to nothing? Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be out there. Um,
Do you
there's
see
always
like
that.
agents getting like there's going to be more lawsuits and stuff?
Oh, dude, it's going to be a bloodbath for
What
the
does
next.
that mean brokerage wise too? Like if lawsuits happen and you're independent versus like at an EXP or at a brokerage.
Oh, I mean, just like, if we ever have anything happen, I mean, I always say we're not lawyers, but I will say is if you're ever in if you're ever in a legal battle, the best thing you can do is get your broker named into the lawsuit, because then the brokerage goes after that person so heavily. But if you're just by yourself, you're kind of like like you're on your own. So if you're at a big brokerage and they have a big,
Yeah.
big legal team, then you're gonna get a lot of protection. You know, I don't know.
But
It's like everything else. One thing that always bothered me uh about the oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought of what I was gonna say.
well, we were talking about. a lawsuit and go into your big broker, put your broker's name in there.
Yeah, I can't even remember.
You said one thing that always bothers me. That's all
I
right.
know,
I know you
I know,
gotta
I
get.
remember that part. I just like was just
Don't worry about
oh,
it.
I think it's just about it's just hard to when you work with so many people that all dude, I don't it's just the average 70% of the consumers take their agent off a referral. So they'll never interview multiple people. I think
Hmm.
this is going to create a lot of interviewing. And I think you're just going to end up in this very interesting space, at least for the first year or two. I mean, we have a full cycle to go through it. I mean, it's not going to just happen overnight where things change. Um, we've had plenty of clients that are just like, hey, we don't want to, when can we stop paying buyers commissions and this and that? And it's just like, well, you could have done it to begin with.
I like how okay, so now it's going to come down to a lot more interviewing. So this whole early subject was on buyer consults. So like, I think that rounds us out pretty good. Make sure you're having direct conversations with these buyer sellers and showing your worth. And that's the message of today is like the best of the best doing crazy transactions. It's unreal to me to be in a room with them, the confidence that they spew in front of clients to sell. So that's inevitably who you want to surround yourself with. I think today's day and game too is like, dude, who are you surrounding yourself with in real estate?
If
It's whoever you're with is what you're going to look like.
if I was dude, I've had so many agents reach out to me even in the last like month, ever since we started this podcast. They're like, dude, they're like your skill set or your conversation or like your knowledge is insane.
This is why I wanted to start it. This is
And
what you tell me every day, and I'm just like, it needs to get out because everybody hears me all the time.
yeah, so I think I find it very I said at the beginning, I'm like, you need to find a mentor. Like the other day when we were on the podcast, you're like, what would you do? And I'm like, find a mentor. Dude, I've opened my door up to like so many people and like no one does anything and then they end up like fluttering out. But I could literally open up my Zoom room every day for 30 minutes, an hour, and just talk about random things, teach agents how to do this. I think everyone just like focuses on the next deal so much that they're not like crafting their skills. Like I have a lot of experience and training, like in professional sense, but also even like today, like even now, like I'm still learning and doing things all the time to like sharpen my skills.
Yep.
Because I don't know, dude. Like let's just say I'm like, oh, I want a machine gun, and I'm like, it's gonna cost me 30 grand. Well, I can go out and get a listing and buy myself a new toy. And so there's like reasons to do it. And like as the conversation changes, there's going to be leaders of the conversation.
Yep.
And it's like, do I want people to dictate my future for me or do I want to dictate my future for myself? And like at the end of the day, like you don't know how good, like when you're in the trenches and you're doing it yourself, you're like, this is my standard. Like everyone else is doing it this way. Dude, I've like now done so many deals, cross deals, and like even referrals with agents. Like I'm embarrassed for agents more often than I'm like excited. When I sold Redfern, dude, me and this guy like had like freaking bro hugs, like virtual bro hugs. This agent was so good. I was like, dude, you are the best agent I've ever done a deal with in my life.
Yeah.
Dude, you know how many years he's been in real estate? He's on his second year. Year one, he did 43 deals.
You're shitting me.
No. And I said, how many deals? Because I saw on this Facebook group for his team that he closed 20 deals in May.
My God. There is levels to it. So if he impressed you, you knew right away this dude's doing stuff.
Dude, I texted him. I said, look, I said, I don't know. I said, if you ever want to have conversations, whatever, I
Yeah.
said, my door is open to you. He's
Well,
like 30
yeah.
years old. He just got into real estate. He was like in corporate America his whole life. He's like, I wish I had known about this 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's always impressed me that I mean, we've had over like 500 people join our organization, and I think it always comes across as like a recruiting and this and that. But I think they inevitably see the value and they get the marketing side of this, but it's the behind the scenes that nobody ever gets to hear. We don't ever record it, other than privately for them, but you working with these people in their businesses and being direct with them. And then we talk to them in like 3 months later and they're like, oh my God, we're like, how you doing? They're like, I'm so fucking busy and my head's spinning, like it's a really good thing. I wanted to bring this out in the podcast. And We got a minute left. I am getting a lot of your guys' emails, tons. info@jacksonwilkie.com. That's the easiest email. We use DJ, Brett, Mark. I mean, tons of you guys. I'm seeing them. They're more related questions towards me and YouTube. I'll try and answer you guys. Send us a bunch of questions for Jesse for this podcast. Anything you want. And then if you are interested in partnering with us at EXP, look, we ain't recruiting shit. People are joining us every day. And I actually got 3 emails of people now like, all right, take me to the promised land. It's real deal. Shoot me an email, info@jacksonwilkie.com. But we're going to keep this podcast rolling, and you guys send us some podcast name ideas. But questions, partnership, just email me. You know
I
how to
told
get a
Jackson
hold
I
of
was
us.
looking up the a name for the podcast, and I said typed in the chat GPT, what is the most triggering word to real estate agents? Because I was like, that might be a good word to have as the podcast name. Jackson, what was it?
You know what? Maybe it'll be our next podcast, and they won't know until they come listen to it because
Okay,
it's
that's a
gonna
good one.
fire some people. I was way off, by the way, but yes, once I heard it, I was like, that is the most triggering word, and that will be our next podcast.
Okay, we'll open it up with that. That's a good hook at the end.
And that was not planned, but
Nope.
one love, homies. We'll holler at you.
See ya.